I never believed that the dead could listen, until I started speaking to him every night. His name was Ethan, the boy who promised to stay until his last breath, and he did. It's just that his last breath came too soon. The day he died, the world went silent for me. There were no tears left, no screams, just the sound of his laughter replaying inside my head like a broken song on repeat. Everyone told me to move on, but how could I? Ethan wasn't just someone I loved, he was the rhythm my heart learned to beat with. A month after his funeral, I sat by the window where we used to talk for hours, my hands trembling around his old watch. Cracked glass, stopped at 2:03 a.m., the time of the accident. That's when I heard it. A whisper so soft it felt like it came from inside me. Anna, I froze. The room was dark, still, except for the faint glow of the moon painting his photo on the wall. My heart raced, my breath caught, it couldn't be real. But then, the lights flickered once, like a heartbeat that shouldn't exist. I whispered back, Ethan. Nothing. Just silence. But that silence felt alive. From that night, I started talking to him every night at 2 a.m. I didn't expect answers, I just needed to feel less empty. I would tell him about my day, about how the world kept spinning even when I wanted it to stop. Some nights, the curtain near his picture would sway, even though the air was still. Other nights, I would smell his cologne, that same woody scent that lingered on his jacket the day he left me. My friends said it was grief playing tricks, but grief doesn't move picture frames or flicker lamps in rhythm with your heartbeat. I started recording my nightly talks. When I played them back, I expected to hear whispers, echoes, something. But there was only my voice, trembling, tired, lost. The rest was static, yet every night, I returned. Because even if the world called me delusional, I could feel him. He was out there, between the air and the silence, waiting for me to speak again. One night, as rain poured outside, I said the words I had never dared to say while he was alive. Ethan, I'm sorry I didn't tell you how much I loved you when I had the chance. The lights flickered 3 times, fast, like Morse code. I felt my chest tighten, my body shaking as if something inside me was being answered. I cried until dawn. When I woke up the next morning, his old notebook, the one I'd kept inside a drawer, was lying open on my desk. The page read, "If I ever go before you, I'll still listen. Just talk to me in the dark." The next few nights, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at that notebook, tracing those words again and again like they held a secret I hadn't understood yet. Why had I never seen that page before? I remembered flipping through the notebook after the accident, it was blank then. I was sure of it. Now, the ink was faded but fresh enough to bleed into my fingertips. I started to wonder if this was real, if Ethan was truly reaching out from wherever he was. Or was it my own heart conjuring signs to survive? Either way, I needed answers. So that night, I placed his watch and the notebook together by the window, whispering, "Ethan, if you can really hear me, give me a sign." The wind outside went completely still. Seconds later, the clock on my wall stopped, frozen again at 2:03 a.m. And then I heard it. A low hum. My name. Faint, trembling, carried by the air itself. Anna. My whole body turned to ice. I looked at his photo, the one smiling back at me, and for the first time, the eyes in that photo seemed alive. My heartbeat was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. "Ethan," I whispered, "please, tell me you're okay." There was a pause. Then the whisper again, "Read the last page." I ran to the notebook. It was glowing faintly under the moonlight. The last page was blank, until my tears touched it. Slowly, letters began to form. Shaky handwriting, but familiar. His. It read, "I never left. I'm here until you learn to live again." I fell to my knees, sobbing. I didn't know whether to feel comforted or terrified. Maybe both. For weeks after, I lived between the living and the dead, half in memories, half in whispers. My mother begged me to stop talking to ghosts, but she didn't understand. It wasn't death I was speaking to. It was love, the part of love that refuses to die. As time went on, I noticed something changing. The whispers grew softer each night. The lights stopped flickering. It was as if Ethan was slowly fading away. I realized then what he meant. He wasn't haunting me, he was helping me heal. On the final night, as I sat by the window, I whispered, "Ethan, I'll be okay now." And for the first time in months, I felt peace instead of pain. The clock ticked past 2:03 for the first time since the accident. I smiled through my tears. Love didn't end with his death, it transformed into silence that still listened. I loved him after he was gone, and somehow, I think he loved me until I was ready to let him go. After that night when Ethan's final message appeared in his notebook, my world began to change quietly, almost invisibly, like winter melting into spring. I still spoke to him sometimes, but the desperation was gone, it was replaced by a strange calm that felt almost sacred. I began to walk outside again, feeling the sunlight without flinching, and noticing how the same sky that once seemed empty now looked full of hidden meanings. Every breeze felt like his presence brushing against me, every faint echo in the hallway sounded like his laughter in another time. But I also knew deep down that he was drifting further away. His signs became rarer, the scent of his cologne faded slower each night, and the clock on the wall stopped flickering at 2:03. It was as if he was waiting for me to take the final step, to move on, not with sadness, but with gratitude. One evening, as the rain whispered against my window, I sat with his notebook in my lap and began writing my own letter to him. I told him about the new things I was trying, painting again, reading the books he once loved, meeting friends I had ignored in my grief. I told him about the peace I was beginning to feel, and how it scared me because I didn't want it to mean forgetting him. When I finished, I placed the letter beside his photograph and whispered, "You taught me how to love, Ethan. Now I'm learning how to live." The lights didn't flicker this time, and there was no whisper from the dark, but in that silence, I felt something deeper, an understanding that his silence wasn't absence. It was release. A few nights later, I dreamed of him for the first time since the accident. He stood on a bridge surrounded by soft golden light, his smile exactly the same as the day we met. I tried to reach him, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. He looked at me and said softly, "You did it, Anna. You found the light again." I woke up crying, but for the first time, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of completion. The clock on the wall ticked normally, the air felt still and whole, and I knew, this was goodbye. I opened the window and let the dawn breeze sweep across my face, whispering, "I'll love you always, but I'll live for you now." The room felt lighter, brighter, and for a brief second, the sound of laughter echoed faintly, like a farewell carried on wind. From that day, I never felt haunted again. I felt guided. Years passed, but Ethan never truly left my heart. I graduated, moved into a small apartment overlooking the sea, the kind of view he always dreamed of seeing one day. Life grew fuller, but not louder. Sometimes I'd sit by the balcony, watching the waves crash against the shore, and talk to him in my thoughts. Not the way I used to, but like speaking to a memory that smiles back without words. I met new people, learned to laugh freely again, and even started telling our story in quiet whispers to those who needed hope. It felt like keeping him alive through kindness, through light. One stormy evening, while I was sorting old things, I found his watch again, the one that had stopped at 2:03. I turned it over in my hand, remembering every heartbeat that once matched its tick. I wound it slowly, half afraid it would stay still forever. But then it began to move again, ticking softly, calmly, as if time itself had forgiven me for holding on too long. That gentle sound filled the room like music. I smiled, whispering, "You're free now, Ethan." The next morning, I visited his grave for the first time in years. The cemetery was quiet, kissed by a soft fog that curled around the trees. I placed white lilies on the stone, his favorite, and sat there for a long while, just listening to the birds. "You kept your promise," I said softly. "You stayed until I learned to live again." A tear slipped down my cheek, not from sadness, but from gratitude. The sun broke through the clouds at that moment, lighting the stone in a way that felt impossibly deliberate. I laughed through the tears, realizing he was still there, just not in the way I once knew. As I walked away, a small boy passing by looked at me and said, "That man behind you is smiling." I turned, But of course, no one was there. Yet my heart knew the truth. From that day on, I stopped waiting for signs. I didn't need them anymore. Ethan was part of me, part of every good thing I chose to become. His love had turned from a ghost into a guardian, from a haunting into a heartbeat that lived within my own. Every time I helped someone smile, every time I faced the world with courage, I felt him there, proud, gentle, eternal. Years later, when I wrote a book about our story, I titled it the same words that once echoed through my grief. I loved him after he was gone. Because love doesn't end with goodbye, it simply learns new ways to exist. And sometimes, when the rain falls softly against the window and I close my eyes, I still hear him whisper, "You did it, Anna." And I whisper back, "We did."